Hi guys, you're watching this week's 5y5. That is 5 yards, of course. Ali Maxwell and George Ellick here. We are 5 yards ambassadors. And as 5 yards ambassadors, we have had a hell of a week, George Ellick, with the game launching last Friday. And we've been working with the founders of 5 yards, the 5 yards czars, as I call them, for around a year now, trying to build a product that we think people will love. And over the course of a year, you have highs and lows, you have excitement, you have doubts, and really you just hope that people like it. And thankfully, all of our dreams kind of came true in that first week that we've had.
Yeah, it was incredible. I've never really experienced anything like it, except I guess when we first put out a Not the Top 20 podcast. I remember sitting in the pub and watching the podcast kind of rising the iTunes charts. And little did we know where that would lead. But it's a similar thing where we put so much work into it. We've had so many conversations about different parts of the game, that seeing people playing it, seeing people talking about it who we don't even know, launching a competition with someone like Natalie Sawyer as well, which if you haven't seen, do check out. It's there open for women between the age of 18 to 25 to submit a scout report and win a chance to interview her and get paid to do so. It's a great time, and you can kind of see the 5 yards community starting to grow, and that's what this is all about. And I just really hope everyone is enjoying it at this early stage, because we are certainly enjoying the fact that it's now out there in the open.
And that is what 5 yards 5 is all about as well. This weekly show is not aimed at trying to get people on 5 yards. It's aimed at you guys who are already playing and just chatting about it, chatting about some interesting players. George, first week, we wanted people to engage with 5 yards in a number of ways. We wanted scout reports to be submitted. We wanted people to be buying and selling players, of course. And we wanted people to be requesting players as well. Because one of our favorite things about 5 yards is that your first player request is guaranteed to be added to the platform. We've got so many players on there already, but of course, there'd be some that weren't. Who were the most requested players from our first users in our first week?
Yeah, you are right, because there are plenty of different ways to play the game, and getting involved in the scouting and requesting players is certainly part of it. And that has been so popular early on, which is great to see. And it's also good to see a very kind of EFL trend amongst the most popular players being requested. The most popular, Joe Gelhardt, who of course swapped Wigan for Leeds in the summer, a player who hasn't seen much time at Leeds so far, but a player that we know a lot about and is destined for some pretty big things. Then just below, Florian Balogun. Unlike Arsenal fans, get overexcited about a youth team product, isn't it? Especially before they played much first team football. But I hear this guy is pretty special. A couple of EFL players who are really making a splash this season in League One: Keane Lewis Potter of Hull and Siriki Dembele of Peterborough. Two guys who, in Dembele, we've spoken about a lot. We didn't know much about Lewis Potter before this season, but certainly getting on the score sheet a fair bit. And we spoke to Grant McCann, Hull manager, who was glowing in terms of the way he spoke about Lewis Potter. And finally, Thiago Almada, a player for Vélez Sarsfield, who I know absolutely nothing about, and probably at the end of this recording, we'll do some research on. So those are the requests, Ali. But another part of playing the game is, of course, putting your money down and backing your opinion.
Yeah,
who's pretty popular in that regard.
Well, just to say that Almada, I only know him as a Football Manager wonder kid. So maybe there's...
That's where it's from.
We thought there might be a bit of Football Manager 5 yards 5 sort of crossover, and maybe that's what we're seeing there. The most popular buys on the platform are really interesting because it's a real mix. And again, that's really pleasing, I think, for everyone at 5 yards. Finlay Corrigan is number one. He's the cheapest player on the platform, the lowest value player. He's a really young player on the books at Ipswich Town, and by all accounts, a very, very talented player. People want to buy Finlay Corrigan for the pure upside, really, just to see what happens there. But you've also got second place Adama Traore. People thought that his price looked a little low, and many people have taken advantage of that. Youssoufa Moukoko, we've all heard about the kid at Dortmund who just turned 16 and can now play first team football for them. Insane goal scoring record in their youth team. So many people want to be on the Moukoko wagon. And then in the EFL, Ivan Toney's been banging in the goals for Brentford this season. People clearly see a Premier League player in the making and want to get involved. And Erling Braut Haaland finishes off the top 5. The second most expensive player on the platform at £130 million is not putting people off buying into the robot Haaland. But the 5x5 is also about us flagging up players that we think are interesting prospects on the platform. either to buy or to sell, or just interesting players to think about. Who are you going for first here?
And now, having spent most of my teens buying Tontonzola Makuku, I'm wondering if I should spend my time now buying another Makuku. But the first player I'm going to be talking about is Federico Chiesa, who scored and got an assist for Juventus last night in their 3-0 home win over Dynamo Kiev. And he's a player who looks to me like he's at that sweet spot where he's about to become very, very popular, very, very well known. But at the moment, maybe he's a little bit under the radar. 23 years of age, just turned 23. He's up on the game at 48 million. So you can buy him 48 million. And that seems pretty low to me. And even just watching his performance last night against Kiev, the goal itself was a header, not a goal you necessarily would associate with a wide player. It was actually the technique in doing so was amazing, kind of Ronaldo-esque. The ball was behind him and he managed to stretch behind himself and head it back into the far corner. The assist was a lovely through ball played for Morata. He could probably claim the assist for the second goal as well. He cut inside and had a shot that was parried into the path of Ronaldo. So a player who, in that nutshell, you see a lot about him. He's got the pace to take players on. He's happy to go outside onto his right-hand side or cut inside and even shoot with his weaker foot on his left. He hasn't got searing pace, but he's quick enough on the ball. And he's got the physicality as well to go alongside it. He's not particularly diminutive. And he's only just arrived at Juventus. He was on loan. He's on loan, from Fiorentina. They have an obligation to buy, so he'll go there in the summer. But in that time at Fiorentina and in the infancy of his time at Juventus, he scored 26 Serie A goals and 26 Serie A assists. He got a goal last night in the Champions League. He's won 3 Champions League games already. So we know with 5 yards, the key to this is getting players who are going to earn you PP, who are going to earn you performance pay. You get that through starting and winning games. You get that from scoring goals. You get that from getting assists. This is a guy who's going to be playing for Juventus for the next few years. So goals, assists, and wins are not going to be particularly hard to come by. He's going to play a lot of Champions League football as well. And because he's just moved, and because maybe he's not as high profile as some other players in that Juventus side, I think that £48 million is low. The key to this is finding players who specialise in the stuff that's important for PP. There's one scout report up at the moment on there, and that ranks his level now at 75, his potential level at 85. And I think that's a bit low. I think that's a bit harsh. The defensive duels, he's got a low ranking on the scout report here. But he's a player who can often play a more withdrawn right-sided role. He's very versatile, can play on the left or the right, can play kind of a more advanced winger in the 3 or in behind. He's even played up front before, and that versatility will be key as well. So Federico Chiesa is a player that I'm excited about. I think Juventus have made a very astute signing there as well. We've already seen in what he's done that PP will not be short to come by for him. So £48 million, it's a strong buy for me.
Interesting. I don't want to make this too Juve heavy, but I think there's a real intrigue in another Juventus player. And I should start by saying this is not a strong buy for me. This is not a buy for me at the moment. This is a hold. This for me is pure 5 yards interest early on in the life of the game. Here's someone that I'm really intrigued by, and it's Alvaro Morata, who, as you say, benefited from Chiesa's performance in midweek. The reason I think he's a fascinating prospect in 5 yards terms is there are various ways that you can filter through the players on the site. You can filter by current season performance pay, last year, obviously value, by position, by club, by league. And if you look at the attacking players on site, the forward players, the strikers, Morata is such a clear outlier at the moment at the very top of the game. He's got the second highest PP this season, that's including Serie A and Champions League, of any player on the platform. He's already earned 7.1 million in performance pay this season, thanks to 10 Champions League returns. That is 3 wins that he started in, 6 goals and 1 assist. But he hasn't moved at all from his £35 million value. And I think that's really, really interesting. Part of the reason why, of course, is that value represents what 5 yards analysts think is their likely career performance pay from this point. So a 28-year-old is a really intriguing prospect. Not a ton left in their career, but for someone who can extend their career, there could still be a good few years in there. Anyone who had Morata from the start of the season would have already made 20% of their stake back just in performance pay alone, and his value has stayed the same as well. So of course you'd be laughing at that stage. Going back, I think he's going a lot better than many thought he would at Juve. He's joined on loan from Atleti, and it's clear that Pirlo really likes him. It's clear that he's thriving, scoring in Serie A as well. And I think even though he's only on loan, it's reported that they can extend the loan for another year or, of course, buy him outright. And I'd be surprised, based on his current form, if Juve didn't want that. It looks like a really good fit. Juventus, not scared of strikers moving towards their 30s and beyond. Serie A is often known as a retirement home for good strikers. They tend to keep scoring much later on in their career than many other divisions. So this is where you guys watching really come to the fore, I think. This is what you have to be thinking about on 5 yards. If you think Juventus are legit and could go deep in the Champions League this year, and if Morata, you think, has found a home where he could feasibly play and score at the highest level for, 2 or 3 or 4 years or more, then he has to be interesting at £35 million, because there are very few strikers playing for top clubs who are not well above 50 million. So even as a short-term play to try and get ahead of a price rise, which could be incoming given his form, then it gets pretty interesting pretty quickly. How long will the analysts, those who set the prices, stand their ground on Morata? Mm-hmm. But you also might think, and this is the beauty of 5 yards, it's all about opinions. You might think this is a bit of a flash in the pan, not sustainable, and not get blinded by that £7.1 million of PP figure. Just think it's a bit of a quirk, a bit of an outlier. The analysts are obviously bullish on that front. That PP is so eye-catching. But of course, if you buy into him now, you've missed the boat there. You only earn on PP when a player is in your squad. Juve have qualified for the next round of the Champions League, and their last group game is at Barcelona next week. How much further will they go? How many more PP returns will you expect Morata to get in the Champions League this year? Will he continue to notch goals in Serie A? These are the big questions you have to be asking yourself on 5 yards. And he is suspended for the game this weekend, so there's no rush to think about this one right now. But I just wanted to flag up an intriguing player on 5 yards at the moment. A fascinating case study, if you will, George. Who do you want to talk about next? It's normally around this stage of 5x5 that we look at someone who we think might be on the decline.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about a sell, and it's the greatest player to ever play football. It's Lionel Messi, who's up on 5 yards at 82 million. Now, look, I am signed up to the Lionel Messi fan club. There's no debate in my mind. The Messi-Ronaldo debate is for fools. It's for people who don't know their football. There's only one winner here, and that's Lionel Messi. I have to say that because I'm scared that if I don't, I'll get ambushed by lots of Messi fans instead. I'll try to be Ronaldo fans instead. But there are just signs that maybe the era of Lionel Messi, at least at Barcelona, are coming to a close. We had that long, drawn-out transfer saga in the summer where he quite clearly wanted to leave the club and Barcelona stood in his way. Things haven't been particularly happy at Barcelona for Lionel Messi since then. He was rested in the Champions League last night again, on Tuesday night. So he's missed 2 consecutive Champions League games. In La Liga, his output has been massively diminished as well. Just 4 goals and no assists in the 8 La Liga games so far. And Barcelona themselves are just not what they once were with Ronald Koeman in charge. They don't look like the tour de force they used to be. They don't look like a particularly dominant force in Europe, possibly not even in Spain at the moment either. Whether Lionel Messi will still be there next season, we don't know. If he were to leave, would it be Man City as it looked like it was going to be in the summer? Could it possibly even be a side in, for example, America? Could it be a side in China? Could he be looked for one last payday, in which case his value would absolutely plummet? 82 million he's on at the moment, and given his age, you're expecting to make that up in PP alone. Performance pay this season, 6.1 million. It just seems high for me. I feel like he would have to play to a level we've grown accustomed to him playing, at a level we've grown accustomed to Barcelona playing for another three or so years in order to do that. And that just looks unlikely at the moment. Of course, he'll come back into the Barcelona lineup as they get into the Champions League latter stages. But I don't think he's happy there. And I think that's showing in his performances as well. And this dearth of goals or dearth of output isn't just this season. He went on that run of games. I think it was 6 or 7 games, wasn't it, when he was searching for that record-breaking goal at the back end of last season as well. I love him. I hope he carries on playing at that top level. He could easily have another 2 or 3 great years left in him, and that 82 million would still be high on 5 yards. I think he's a sell. The one thing I would say, looking at his player card up there on 5 yards, nobody's written a scout report on Lionel Messi. Is it just too easy?
Say?
Is it because exactly? Anybody watching this, I'd love to read how you'd write a scout report about the best ever, because it must be shades of who. I guess there's only one man, and that was who he paid tribute to on the weekend as well. But Lionel Messi at 82 million, I can only see that price coming down.
From the Champions League to the Championship, from a player who is so small to a player who is so lanky. Dominic Solanke of Bournemouth, I want to talk about here.
God.
I think he's a really interesting player in 5x5 terms. And for me, he is a small buy. Not a big buy, but a small buy. He's a player that divides opinion, and that's what we love. Just for reference, for those watching, he's a Championship striker, plays for Bournemouth. And of course, on the platform, he is £14.5 million. That's his value. For reference, other strikers in the Championship, Ivan Toney at 19, Tyrese Campbell at 18, Armstrong at 16, and Marcus Forss is definitely an intriguing one for a future 5x5 episode at 15 million. That's their price on 5 yards. Solanke is, as everyone I think pretty much knows, a talented all-round striker who for a while now has not looked that comfortable in front of goal, has done an awful lot in terms of his all-round game, but last season waited a long time for his first Premier League goal for Bournemouth, to the point where it was quite uncomfortable viewing, and finally got one just at the back end of the season to head into this year with some confidence. This year, he's got 5 goals in the Championship. He's Bournemouth's joint top scorer. They played 15 games so far, so it's not a prolific return, but it looks to me like his confidence is growing. It's definitely not all there just yet. He's still underperforming his XG ever so slightly, which is concerning. But he's made 15 individual performance pay returns this season in 15 games. That's 7 wins in games that he's started, 5 goals and 3 assists. I expect another 30-odd individual returns this season from Solanke if Bournemouth finish around where I think they will. But of course, in Championship terms, and when you're looking at EFL players on the platform, because performance pay is so low in the Championship and doesn't exist for League One and League Two, you really are trying to play a long-term game with these players. Any EFL players that you're looking at, PP is unlikely to make a huge dent in things. So what you really need to do is back players that you think will reach the Premier League or any top 5 league in Europe, and ideally the promised land of the Champions League, where things really get very interesting indeed. But that's why these players' values are relatively low. And the low prices mean fairly low risk. I mean, I'm looking at Solanke as a 23-year-old striker with unbelievable pedigree from his youth career, as we know. And I think the level he's playing at now, where he plays for, let's say, a top 6 Championship side, is the lowest level that he will play at, certainly for the next 5 or 6 years, as far as I can see. That's based on the sort of player that I think he is and the talent that he could still fill into. So I think it's unlikely that he would ever lose value, at least certainly not in the short term. My opinion is that Solanke is a good all-round player and that he'll get even better in terms of goal scoring. I think that goals will start to flow. I've got belief in Solanke. If you take goals out, just as a player, he's the manager's dream because he's mobile, but he's quite big and strong. He can bring players into play. And if you look at his pressing numbers, certainly from the Premier League last season, he was one of the most mobile strikers willing to lead the press from the front. And as we know, that goes a long way in the modern game. I think there's been too much, or is too much, negative narrative around Solanke. That comes from a move to Liverpool and various rumours about requested wages and bad agents, that sort of thing. And I think it's unfair. I think that there's too many people who have made their minds up on a player who is a 23-year-old striker. Most strikers age 23 haven't even got close to the Premier League yet. So I think Bournemouth have a pretty good chance of being promoted. And if they're promoted and Solanke's their top scorer, which he currently is, suddenly the discussion changes. The perception around him changes. Suddenly there's a 23-year-old striker playing in the Premier League with goals to his name, with form and confidence. So the reason I wanted to talk about Solanke is this is the essence of 5 yards, and hopefully people are understanding this as they play around on 5 yards in its first week and beyond. For everyone that believes Solanke can be a Premier League player, like me, this looks like a buy. But there will be plenty who look at Solanke who just don't see it, who just don't believe that goal-scoring touch will ever come, and therefore don't think that he would ever reach much higher than where he is now, in which case you leave him well alone. 5 yards is all about having opinions on players and backing them. And that's what I'm doing here. Just with a buy of Solanke, I want to be on board in case what I think happens comes true, which leaves us one more player to talk about, George.
Yeah, well, there are 40 players. 40 players. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but 40 players going up onto 5 yards tomorrow. So do make sure you check and see if the players you requested have been put up. And there are so many interesting ones on the list. Barry Hepburn, a 17-year-old winger at Bayern Munich who was signed from Celtic in the summer. Luke Hogg from Ossett United, I'm not even going to try and pretend I know who Luke Hogg is, but I'm fascinated to see who's submitted him. Jack Byrne from Shamrock Rovers. I mean, you really can genuinely put anybody up and we will get him up on the game. Doesn't matter what level they're playing at whatsoever. You know, Ali, me and you, we love our football. We talk about loads of different stuff, but the EFL is what we're paid to talk about, and that's our speciality. So I'm going to pick an EFL player, and there are a fair few going up tomorrow who are of interest to me. Brennan Johnson, who's on loan at Lincoln, is one of them. Another Lincoln player, Lewis Montsma, another who could go very far indeed. But the player I'm going to choose is Gustavo Harmer, who is at Coventry. He was bought by Coventry for over £1 million, which is a big transfer fee for a side just coming up from League One in the summer from Zwolle in the Netherlands. And he's a defensive midfielder by definition. But in terms of what he does and the way he plays, he's a kind of very modern day defensive midfielder because he's not just a tackler. He does break up play well. He is very mobile and he's happy to get stuck in. Sometimes, you know, it's never, sometimes it's not a particularly good trait of his game. He can get booked and get sent off and has a bit of a hot head on him as well. Can be a liability when that's the case. But he's also very silky on the ball. He's got a brilliant eye for a pass, the technical qualities to pull it off. He's scored 3 goals already. He's got an assist. He's even popped up playing on the right wing recently for Mark Robbins' side. And he's being put up on 5 yards at £7 million tomorrow, which I think is interesting. I'm not necessarily putting it up as a buy, but the reason I think it's interesting is because there's absolutely no doubt that Gustavo Harmer is using Coventry City. Coventry City will be happy to be used by him, but in his mind, if he's still at the club in 18 months, one of two things must have happened. Either Coventry have been promoted to the Premier League, very unlikely given they're going to be battling relegation to League One this season, or something has gone wrong in his career. He hasn't progressed as he should do because he is a very, very good player who I'm sure a lot of championship clubs towards the top end of the league and even lower table Premier League clubs will be interested in. In terms of PP, he's not going to be a goal and assist machine, I don't think, but you're going to have a longevity here, a guy who could feasibly, he's one of the few players in the championship who could really play for any club. The ceiling is very, very high indeed. So for £7 million, it's a bit of a punt. You're not going to start earning straight away, but it would be no surprise if in 2 years or so, he's playing at a much higher level. He's a Netherlands youth international, which shows the esteem that he's held in. And he'd be a very fun, kind of low risk purchase, I would say, to see where he goes next.
Well, that's it for the 5Y5. This is the second ever episode. And make sure that you know that the transfer window on 5 Yards is open on Tuesdays and Fridays between 9 and 6. That is the time period where you can buy in and sell players on 5 Yards. All week long, you can be on there scouting, working out who you're interested in, checking out different parts of the platform, reading things on the field. But Tuesday and Friday is where your bread and butter is served to you. As George said, 40 new players going on the platform, and just really worth reminding you that your first request when you sign up to 5 Yards will be added to the platform. That can be whoever you want, even if, as George said, it's Luke Hogg in the 8th tier of English football. You can request any player in any league and your first request will go on the platform. So sign up to 5 Yards if you haven't already. Hopefully you've enjoyed listening to us chat through some players on site and discussing why we think they're interesting prospects on the game, either as a buy or as a sell, or as a hold. Hope you're enjoying 5 Yards, and please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get this fresh every single week. This has been the 5 Yards 5. Thanks for watching.